ItsOcean! Tally-ho, ItsOcean back again with the tier list compendium. I made a tier list video that was going to be 100 games in one tier list. I decided to split it up into smaller chunks, and this is the fourth part of that video. So let's not waste any more time, let's get straight into 25 more games on this tier list. Take it away, Past Ocean. Now I just realised one of the games that I have on my list is not part of a franchise, but it's a very similar game by a developer that's on this list already, and that game is Tell Me Why, and I forgot that I put that on here. Now I'll admit, I do understand why some people might enjoy this game, because it does do a very good job with trans representation, and I think that's fantastic. But I thought Tell Me Why was just okay. I don't know, there's something about that game that just didn't grab me as much as the Life is Strange games. It may just be the fact that the game was shorter than the Life is Strange games. I still think it's a really cool game, and I still would recommend checking it out. But I don't know, I just thought it was just fine. It was just fine. Now then, I'm going to jump into another singular game, and this game is one that doesn't really need an introduction. It involves blocks. I say that, I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm talking about. That game, of course, is Minecraft. And I'm going to put this in pretty darn good. Just because it's one of those games that's very reliable for me. I will always come back and play this game, whether it's by myself, with my partner, with friends, or whatever. But I don't see it as anything more than just a really good game. I don't see it as a masterpiece, although I do really respect the game. So I feel like pretty darn good is the perfect place to put that. Now then, another singular game, because I'm doing singular games now, don't you know? And I'm going to talk about A Plague Tale. This game is another game that really shocked and surprised me at how good it was. The story was very heartfelt, emotional, and kind of depressing, but I loved the characters, I loved the story, I loved the gameplay, I loved the soundtrack. I just thought that it was all really good. But for some reason, once again, there's something about it that doesn't quite push it past the threshold into masterpiece, and therefore I'm going to be putting A Plague Tale into pretty darn good. I also have just noticed, I didn't realise I put this game on the list. Portal 2, I forgot I put this one in there, so I'm going to quickly do this one now, and I'm going to put that also in pretty darn good, basically for the same reasons as Portal 1. It's just, I thought it was a fantastic game as usual, but it's just pretty darn good. So I'm going to be going into more of a story-centric game now, one of which I did over on my Kingfish channel a little while ago, and that game is Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods, I'm going to put in pretty darn good, because I thought it was a very heartfelt, very emotional, and quite an incredible game. It really took me by surprise of how good it was. But I personally, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I personally felt that the ending kind of let the game down for me. Because for me, Night in the Woods feels like a coming-of-age story. It's all about young adult characters, or characters that are just going into adulthood, dealing with the adult world, and realising that everything is not as bright as they thought it was. You know, it's kind of a depressing game in places. It deals with a lot of topics like mental health, the economy, and things like that. But the ending sort of went away from that a little bit and got a little bit too kooky for my liking and kind of let it down a little bit, so I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Now this game's going to be kind of random, but I'm going to be talking about Super Monkey Ball 2. Now, this game came out for the Nintendo GameCube, and I freaking love this game. I thought this was an absolutely fantastic game, full of wonderful little mini-games. And for me personally, this was the last good Monkey Ball game before the series really started to derail, unfortunately. And I'm going to be putting Super Monkey Ball 2 in pretty darn good. Now then, there's a franchise that I want to talk about, but because there's so many games in the franchise, I decided to talk about one game in the franchise, and that is Pokemon. And the game I'm going to be talking about is Pokemon Ruby. I specifically picked Ruby because that was the version I had, but I mean Ruby and Sapphire as a whole. Some people are going to disagree with me on this. I know a lot of people have a disliking to the third gen of Pokemon, but this for me was when my love for Pokemon really took off. I played the originals, I played Gold and Silver as well, I loved those games, but Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were for me the definitive Pokemon game. They were my favourites by far. I do recognise that they do have a lot of issues though, and for that reason I'm going to put it in pretty darn good. Now the next one is going to be a classic GameCube title, and that game is Super Smash Bros. Melee! And straight away, without even a second of hesitation, I'm putting it in Masterpiece, because that's what it is. It's a goddamn masterpiece. I freaking adore this game. So the next one is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Hell yes. One of my favourite movies of all time, and this game is also goddamn incredible. But it's very goddamn frustrating, because I suck at it. And thus, I'm going to put it in pretty darn good. Although this game alone is the reason why I got into the band Anamanaguchi, and I can't help but thank it enough, because good god they are such a good band. I also just realised there's another game in another franchise that I didn't freaking talk about, and that game is Silent Hill 3. I didn't think this game was as good as Silent Hill 2, and I kind of wish they wouldn't have gone with the whole sequel to Silent Hill 1 kind of thing, because even though Silent Hill 1 is also a great game, I much preferred the storytelling of Silent Hill 2, of the town of Silent Hill kind of being almost like an ethereal being that lures people in, rather than it being about a town that has a cult. But I'm still going to be putting it in pretty darn good, because I still really enjoyed this game. I just don't quite think it's as good as Silent Hill 2. Another entry into another franchise that I forgot to talk about because your boy's a dumbass, and that franchise, once again, is Metal Gear Solid, and I'm talking about the wonderful MGS3. Snake Eater! And in my opinion, it's one of the best games of all time. And for that reason, I don't even need to say that much about it. I'm putting it in Masterpiece. It's just goddamn incredible. So, I'm going to be jumping back into Nintendo games now, and this one is a Game Boy Advance game. I wanted to pick one game from this franchise to talk about, and my pick, Metroid Fusion. I don't know how the fan base feels about this one, but I absolutely love Metroid Fusion. This, for me, is the Metroid game I will always be happy to go back to and play. I'm going to be putting it in pretty darn good. Now, this is going to be a singular game. I am going to mention its sequel, unfortunately, but this game is The Last of Us. Hailed by quite a few people as one of the greatest games ever made. I'm not gonna lie, I don't quite agree with that, but one of the greatest stories in games, sure, definitely. But I always saw The Last of Us 1 as most of its hype comes from the story. The soundtrack's phenomenal, the acting's phenomenal, the characters are phenomenal, the story's phenomenal, but for me the gameplay is what lets it down. I always found the gameplay of The Last of Us to be a little bit kind of dull, and for that reason it gets knocked down to pretty darn good. But I still agree with all the story stuff, like I said, it's all phenomenal. And I've not got it on the list, but I figure I might as well open the cat in the bag. Last of Us 2. I would put that in meh. I just don't think it's great. The story was nowhere near as good as the first one. It has a lot of problems. And yes, I do get what they're trying to do with the story before anyone says it. God damn it. It's got a lot of issues, a lot of character problems that just left me feeling hollow in a different way when the game was over. I was just like, huh. Oh well. The gameplay, once again, still really wasn't that much to talk about, but it was an improvement on the first game, at least, so thumbs up for that. Soundtrack was still great, and graphically it looks absolutely gorgeous, but otherwise, the story was pretty bad, and the gameplay was just eh, and therefore I would put it in meh. Now I'm going to be jumping into yet another franchise, and that franchise is one of my childhood favourites. And that franchise is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So I picked my own personal favourites in the franchise here. So we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, we have Underground, and we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, the most recent game. So let's start off with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. I'm gonna come out and say it. Masterpiece. Masterpiece. Mwah. When the moon hits your eye like a sweet masterpiece, that's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. This is my personal favourite in the franchise. I love the soundtrack, I love all the levels, the gameplay is fantastic. This to me is the definitive Tony Hawk game. I just love it. The best thing about the Tony Hawk games though, at least for the older ones, is that everyone seems to have a different opinion. Some people like 1, some people like 2, some people like 3, some people like 4, some people like Underground, some people even like Underground 2. Some people like the ones after that, but I find that a little bit suspect. But Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 is my personal favourite. Now then, Tony Hawk's Underground. I'm actually going to put this in pretty darn good, because it's still a good game, but after doing a recent replay of the game, I did find quite a few problems with it. I felt like there was a lot of the walking segments were kind of boring at times. It takes a lot of flow out of the fun of the game. The story stuff was really cool though, and I really enjoyed all that, but I felt like it was kind of a step down from some of the past Tony Hawk games, but it's still great. And the final one, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, which is the most recent Tony Hawk game, and I'm also putting this in Masterpiece, baby. Oh yes, a masterpiece. So here I am, doing everything I can, holding on to what I am. pretending I'm a masterpiece. I absolutely adore this game. I still play it now. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. Now then, moving over to 2 entries in a franchise, and that franchise is Telltale's The Walking Dead. I specifically picked Seasons 1 and Seasons 4 because these were my 2 favourites, and I kind of feel like Season 2 was, yeah, it was pretty good, and Season 3 was just, So I've picked Seasons 1 and 4, which were both fantastic. So let's start with Season 1. This to me is the ultimate Telltale game, other than Tales from the Borderlands, which is also fantastic, and I didn't add this to this list, but I'm actually going to put Walking Dead in Masterpiece. Because even though it's a very story-centric game and it's very light on its gameplay elements, I still think it's an incredible time, an incredible experience, and it has a very, very dear place in my heart. Now, Season 4 is also goddamn fantastic, and I do think it is incredible, but I didn't think it was quite as good as the first season. Therefore, I'm putting that one in pretty darn good. Now then, the next franchise I'm going to talk about is The Legend of Zelda. And I've picked 3 games from the franchise, 3 of my favourites, and that is Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Breath of the Wild. Ocarina of Time, don't even have to say it, it's a masterpiece. It is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion. I mean, it's very dated now, I will say. It is a fantastic game, and this is my ultimate childhood game. Anytime I hear that main menu music, oh god, it just takes me back every time. I could honestly sit there and play this game again and again and again and have a blast with it every time. So it's a masterpiece. Majora's Mask I also absolutely love, but the time mechanics can be frustrating in some places, and therefore it's slightly not as good for me. I'm going to put it in pretty damn good. And Breath of the Wild, which is a completely different style of Zelda game, I'm going to put it in pretty damn good. Because for me, I consider this game a flawed masterpiece. For me, I find it to be one of the best Zelda games ever made. I do absolutely adore this game, but I hate the rain in this game. I got stuck in parts of the map because I could not climb my way out of them, and it was so frustrating. I had to just sit and wait for the rain to go away. And I also think the Blood Moon system was massively unnecessary. There was so many instances where I was just about to clear an area of enemies and boom, Blood Moon, so I have to kill them all again. I just think this system was massively unnecessary, and I really despise it. So those 2 things knock it down just a little bit. And the final 3 games I'm going to talk about are from the Resident Evil franchise. I know I already put Resident Evil 1 Remake on there, but I forgot, and 7, but I forgot that I put these in here. So I'm going to go through these in order of my favourite. The first one I'm going to talk about, Resident Evil 3. This game, unfortunately, was kind of a disappointment. It wasn't quite as good as Resident Evil 2 Remake, but I do still think it was a very fun game, and I don't really get all the hatred that this game has gotten, just because it has some missing sections. I still think that it is a very fun game to play, and for that reason I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Now, I will say these games are tied. They're actually tied. I love Resident Evil 4 and I love Resident Evil 2 Remake almost as much as each other. And I'm actually going to be putting Resident Evil 4 in Masterpiece because I truly believe it's one of the best games ever made. I absolutely adore this game and I'm always totally down to just jump back into this game and do a full playthrough on any difficulty. Some people don't like this game because of Ashley Graham, and I totally understand that. She can be irritating at times. But I feel like once you kind of understand those systems and you know what to do with them, you know where to put her and when, it becomes a non-issue. It never ends up being a problem. In fact, you can use her to your advantage, which sounds really weird.
Oh, you pervert.
And the final game is Resident Evil 2 Remake, which, as I said, is on equal footing with Resident Evil 4, therefore it goes in Masterpiece. What is there to say about this game? I just think it's absolutely goddamn incredible. This, for me, sets the bar for what a remake should be. It mostly stays faithful to its original game, while also adding some new stuff. But yeah, so there it is, 100 games. Let me know what you think. Did you like this video? Do you want to see more tier lists? Also, feel free to completely disagree with everything that I said in this entire video in the comments section. Oh, it's gonna be like a battleground. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Pip pip toodaloo!